젊은 해군 조종사들이 폭격 훈련을 위해 캘리포니아 엘센트로를 찾았다.
The first couple flights that you do, it's almost like a head explosion because there's so much going on.
You're learning a dive bombing pattern, which is what they would use in World War II and Korea.
You roll 135 degrees inverted, roll out, and start screaming towards the target.
You get wrapped up in this, oh my gosh, this thing can go so fast and is so cool to look at, but you're forgetting the reason why they were built and why they exist and why we're trained to fly them.
이것은 전쟁 무기로서의 해군 항공에 대한 이야기다. 2차 대전 이후 바다에서 출격하는 비행기들은 전쟁에서 중요한 역할을 담당해왔다.
You are a part of a lineage of people that have been witness to the biggest events of the 20th and now 21st century.
하지만 그것은 위태로운 혈통이었다. 전쟁 능력의 진화와 함께 해군 항공의 운명은 요동쳐왔다. 사라질 뻔한 위기도 있었다. 실용성이 없고 너무 위험하고 시대에 뒤떨어진다는 이유였다. 이것은 공학기술에 대한 끊임없는 도전과 윤리 및 인도주의의 기준에 관한 이야기다.
It won't be easy to think, oh, I'm just gonna go out and drop a bomb, and if it kills somebody, okay.
Snap at 072, 5 miles.
That took some time and definitely some reflection, and I'm ready.
조종석에 앉은 인간. 이런 모습을 얼마나 더 볼 수 있을까? 과연 자동화 장비가 이 조종사들을 대체하게 될까?
The last fighter pilot's been born. Some might say that.
논란이 끊이지 않았던 해군 항공술 100년의 역사. 그 역사 속 주인공들의 이야기를 들어본다. (1910년대와 20년대만) 해도 이 엉성한 복엽기와 임시 나무가판이 훗날 전쟁의 양상을 바꿔놓으리라고 생각한 사람은 극소수에 불과했다. 수백 명의 젊은 비행사들이 목숨을 걸고 이 신기술의 한계에 도전했다. 그리고 20년 만에 초강력 무기가 개발됐다. (2차) 대전 당시 항공모함은 태평양의 주요 전투에서 큰 역할을 해냈다.
Naval aviation ends World War II at the top of the warfare mountain. They've gone from nowhere to being the biggest and baddest weapon in the world, or so they think.
히로시마와 나가사키를 파괴한 원자폭탄으로 인해 기존의 군사 교리도 파괴돼 버렸다. 미국은 곧 독립적인 공군을 창설해 막대한 권한을 부여한다.
The Air Force was assigned the mission for delivering atomic bombs. They were the only ones who had the capability, so that was the logical assignment. The Navy could see that if wars of the future were going to be atomic and we, the Navy, didn't have a capability, we were going to be extinct.
해군은 새로운 항공모함의 미래를 걸었다. 종전 후 최초로 건조하는 완전히 새로운 구조의 항모였다. 그런데 국방장관이 돌연 항모 건조를 중단시켰다. 해군이 하는 일을 공군도 다 할 수 있으므로 해군이 존재할 이유가 없다는 것이었다.
This was a blow to the heart, a dagger to the heart of naval aviation.
The people who support the big bomb aboard the big bomber run by the Air Force think they've got it knocked. They think they've won the great bureaucratic war. They're going to be the dominant service. And then there is Korea.
(1950년 6월 25일) 북한이 한반도 남쪽의 대한민국을 침공했다.
Korea came as a complete surprise to us. The bases that we had planned to use for the Air Force in South Korea were overrun and captured by the North Koreans almost immediately.
남한은 일거에 반도의 끝자락까지 몰렸다. 미군은 가능한 모든 방법을 모색했지만 가장 가까운 공군기지도 수백 킬로미터나 떨어져 있었다. 게다가 소련이 핵무기를 보유 중일지 모르는 상황에서 원자폭탄을 사용할 수도 없었다.
The situation in Korea is so critical that we in the Navy must give the 8th Army the maximum practical support. I direct that the commander of the 7th Fleet, the commander of Carrier Division 15, be directed to provide the maximum possible air gunfire support. Make it move.
충격적인 반전이었다. 해군은 2차 대전 후 방치되어 있던 항공모함 4척을 한반도에 급파한다. 항공모함이 돌아온 것이다.
The Navy starts building one supercarrier per year. Forrestal, Saratoga, Independence, Ranger, Kitty Hawk, Constellation. For the next decade, we add 8 more supercarriers to the fleet.
재래식 무기가 사용된 한국 전쟁은 장장 37개월 동안이나 계속됐다. 해군과 해병대는 500기 이상의 비행기를 잃었다.
I lost 22% of the guys in my squadron when I went to Korea. 22%. You never forget that. You come back from a tour, you've been the commanding officer. There's the single mother. The only thing she had in her life was her son. He was 23 years of age. He was entrusted to you. You were to get him ready, take him over there, bring him home. And you didn't. You got to go visit her. You got to sit on a park bench. You got to let her hold your hand. You just got to sit there and go through it.
한국 전쟁 중에 새로운 형태의 구조작전의 이상적인 항공기가 등장하는데 바로 헬리콥터였다. 1950년 겨울 24살의 조종사 제시 브라운을 구조하기 위해 헬리콥터 한 대가 투입된다. 제시는 아주 당찬 삶을 살아온 젊은이였다. 그리고 피부색의 장벽을 깬 최초의 흑인 전투 비행사이기도 했다.
Jesse grew up in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. His father was a sharecropper. He always wanted to be a naval aviator, but he gave up the idea because blacks were not accepted into aviation. He got a scholarship to Ohio State University, and a Navy lieutenant took a liking to Jesse and encouraged him to put in for it, which Jesse did, and he was accepted into the Navy's flight program.
He arrives in Pensacola, Florida, which is very much a southern city. The entire Navy establishment, from the officers' club to standing in line for a meal, he was alone. There was no one like him.
Yet when he's in the airplane, he generates a certain amount of freedom, only to have to land again and face the social inequalities that existed as part of America.
1948년 교육을 마친 제시는 항공모함 레이테호에 배치된다. 그런데 선상의 분위기는 육지와 달랐다.
There's a sense of acceptance amongst aviators who share a common goal and a common capability.
제시 브라운은 이 항공모함에서 동료 조종사 토머스 허드너를 알게 된다.
Jesse was a very friendly person. They joked that he, by far, got more mail than anybody else on the ship, which was probably true. And he was just a person we all admired and loved.
1950년 12월 4일, 그날도 허드너와 브라운은 여느 때처럼 정찰 임무를 수행한다.
It was cold. We had 6 aircraft in our flight going up for armed reconnaissance. One of the pilots in the flight saw that there was some vapor coming out of Jesse's airplane, and shortly after that, Jesse called out that he was losing oil pressure. He couldn't stay airborne and was going to have to make a crash landing. He landed with such force that there was no question in the mind of any of us but that he had perished in that crash. We circled around there, and we saw that Jesse had opened the canopy and that he was waving to us. But for some reason, he didn't get out of the airplane. I felt that the chances were reasonably good to pull him out of the cockpit and save his life. So I made the decision to make a crash landing. That's a wheels-up landing, close enough to him. When I got to Jesse's plane, I could see that the reason he didn't get out was the way the aircraft had buckled. His knee was caught in there and it just couldn't move. He lapsed in and out of consciousness. I tried to reach in to do something, but there was about 2 feet of snow on the ground. I couldn't do anything without holding on with one hand and doing my best to keep my balance. When I heard the helicopter, it was like manna from heaven. But when he saw Jesse, his jaw dropped. Between the two of us, we couldn't get a firm footing on anything. Jesse was pinned in so badly that we couldn't move him. Now it was about 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Temperature was about 5 or 10 above zero, and with darkness coming, it was going to get a lot colder, a lot faster. The pilot said that he couldn't fly that helicopter in that area after dark. It didn't have instruments, and he said it was suicide for me to have stayed there. I've always felt bad about the decision, but there was really no choice. I like to think that he was not conscious at that time. When we left Jesse, it was a farewell, really, an unspoken farewell.
There's a new magic in the air. It's called jets. And jets change the game for carriers as much as they do for land-based air power, maybe even more.
음속의 2배로 성층권을 가르는 제트기는 우리를 미래의 세계로 안내했다. 하지만 제트기의 갑판 착륙은 쉽지 않았다.
The transition to jet aircraft almost killed aircraft carriers.
Flying jets in the early days off of carriers was at best difficult and at times near suicidal.
결국 조종사들이 변화의 선봉에 서야 했다.
It was hairy. We didn't have a lot of experience. I took command of a jet fighter squadron. I had 1 hour of jet time, 1 hour in a jet aircraft when I took command of a squadron that was going to deploy. I had people reporting to me who had never been in one of those airplanes.
They gave me a handbook and said, when you're ready, come down and I'll give you a plane. So I read the book, I got in the plane, I started it, and the guy gave me an up check and I took off. I was a jet pilot.
해군은 제트기로 인한 문제에 신속히 대처하지 못했다.
When a propeller plane comes aboard a carrier, the pilot takes away the power, the engine stops turning, so the plane settles on the deck. A jet comes in, and it takes something like 35 seconds for the spindle to unwind.
We were going faster. There was no radar. There was not enough room on the carrier.
So he hits the deck and he bounces and he goes over the barricade.
Float over the barriers, land on this pack of aircraft. I've seen 7 or 8 aircraft on fire.
1951년 9월 미 항공모함 에식스호에서 벤시 쌍발 제트기가 착륙 지점을 지나쳐 갑판 전면의 비행기들을 향해 돌진했다. 이 사고로 7명이 사망했다.
Naval aviation during these early days of jets was actually worse in some ways than it was during the golden age of wooden airplanes and iron men in the 20s and 30s. A lot of people died.
If pilots couldn't get jets aboard carriers and make them work well, that carrier part of naval aviation was gone.
하지만 이 불가능해 보였던 문제에도 절묘한 해결책들이 있었다.
We see 3 great things come along which make jets practical on aircraft carriers. The first is the angled deck. The landing section of the deck is slightly canted. All of a sudden, you're not crashing into a deck load of airplanes in front of you. You get another chance. Another thing that they got, the first automated landing system. This is a stabilized system that would provide them an optical landing cue of when they were in the right flight path to come in on that angled deck. And then finally, the British came up with a steam catapult. By the mid-1950s, we're finally producing our first new aircraft carriers, the 4 ships of the Forrestal class. By the late 1950s, the fastest, highest flying, most heavily armed, most powerful airplanes in the world are amazingly fighter bombers flying off of aircraft carriers.
실력 있고 용감한 인재들이 해군으로 몰려들기 시작했고 1959년 우주 계획에도 해군 비행사들이 대거 참여하게 된다.
Liftoff, and the great white rocket with its human cargo rose.
우주 비행사 앨런 셰퍼드, 존 글렌, 스콧 카펜터, 월리 시라, 그리고 닐 암스트롱은 모두 제트기의 전투력 향상에 기여한 테스트 파일럿 출신이었다. 날렵하고 현대적이며 강한 전투력을 자랑하는 이 제트기와 조종사들은 냉전 시대 그야말로 미국의 자랑이었다.
We were struggling with the problem of trying to get a nuclear weapons capability. Then we developed the capability with jets. We could take an aircraft that we'd specially designed, put that 2,000-pound package under it, launch it off the carrier, and that weapon had the explosive yield of 1 million tons of explosive. 1 million tons.
강한 기동성과 핵 폭격기로 무장한 항공모함은 이제 핵 교착 상태에서 가장 무서운 존재가 됐다.
The important thing was it impressed the Soviets. I don't think we appreciate yet the concern that the Soviets had about those aircraft carriers.
The Soviets knew precisely where our nuclear bombers were based. They knew precisely where all of our nuclear weapons in Europe were located. They knew where our intercontinental missiles in the United States were located.
But they didn't know where the carrier was. They could be any place. They could be in the Indian Ocean, they could be in the North Atlantic, they could be in the Mediterranean, North Pacific, South Pacific, China Sea, wherever. And the Soviets couldn't keep track of them all. And so that became a threat to them.
핵무기 훈련은 곧 항공모함의 일상이 된다. 병사들은 매일 훈련을 반복하며 비상사태에 대비했다. 그리고 1962년 10월 21일 결국 비상사태가 발생한다.
I get a call on a Sunday about noon. Says, get down to your ship, get it underway, and head for the Caribbean. I said, all my sailors are in New York. You know, they're up there chasing girls around, which is what they're supposed to be doing, and I hope they're having a good time. I said, no, get underway right now. So we head for the Caribbean. I am carrying 100 nuclear weapons that are to be a backup support for an aircraft carrier that's there that has 100 nuclear weapons. We were pretty serious that we'd make a nuclear weapons attack against Cuba.
이후의 긴박한 상황 속에서 또 다른 형태의 해군 비행 부대가 이 작전에 참여하게 된다.
Reconnaissance is where we have our roots. And in the Cuban Missile Crisis, naval reconnaissance was incredibly important.
정찰을 통해 소련이 쿠바에 건설 중이던 핵미사일 기지의 증거가 포착됐다. 기지가 완성되면 몇 분 안에 미국이 공격당할 수 있었다. 케네디 대통령은 쿠바에 대한 봉쇄 조치를 지시하고 한편으로는 플로리다 잭슨빌에 위치한 건물들을 주목한다. 이곳에 주둔한 해군 부대는 저공 비행과 고해상도 사진 촬영을 위한 제트기를 운영하고 있었다. 명령을 받은 윌리엄 에커 중령이 10월 23일 아침 부하들과 함께 출격한다. 쿠바까지는 몇 분 거리였다.
They make their runs over the missile sites and they see incredible things going on underneath them. People running in every direction. They see the missiles on trailers. They see the launch pads. They see the supporting equipment. You name it, they get pictures of it.
에커 중령이 부대로 복귀하자마자 필름은 즉시 현상소로 옮겨졌다. (10월 25일) 유엔 본부에서 에들라이 스티븐슨 미 대사가 소련을 압박했다.
Do you, ambassadors, deny that the USSR has placed and is placing medium and intermediate range missiles in sites in Cuba? Yes or no?
You will have your answer in due course.
I'm prepared to wait for my answer until hell freezes over, if that's your decision.
The Soviet ambassador to the UN denied that they were placing ballistic missiles in Cuba. And here, Adlai Stevenson motions and in come a few people from the CIA with these boards.
And Ecker, to his amazement, sees the photos that he and his men have been taking suddenly being presented to the world as the best evidence in the court of world opinion.
자료가 공개된 지 3일 만에 소련은 쿠바에서의 미사일 철수를 약속한다. 이렇게 냉전의 균형이 다시 회복됐지만 그리 오래 유지되지는 못했다.
A lot of bombs were dropped on targets that had already been destroyed many times over.
The pilots were getting the heck shot out of them. And every now and then one of them would say, "Skipper, what are we doing in this crazy war?"
It was a real time in the wilderness for everyone involved in that conflict, but certainly naval aviation.
베트남 전쟁은 혼란과 불만의 시기였으며 해군 항공의 암흑기이기도 했다. 조종사들은 일찍부터 불만이 쌓였다. 1965년에는 대규모 폭격 작전이 시작됐지만 정작 중요한 표적에는 접근할 수가 없었다.
The bombing campaign in the north was called Rolling Thunder. The pilots referred to it as Rolling Blunder. They really hated it because the White House, in fact, the president himself, would mark up the targets. And we must only approach in this direction because if you come in this direction, you fly over a public school.
린든 존슨 미 대통령은 베트남 공산당을 공격함으로써 소련과 대리 전쟁을 치르고 있었고 전쟁의 확산을 피하기 위해 신중을 기했다.
Haiphong was a port city in North Vietnam, and Haiphong had a 4-mile circle around it that was a no-fly zone. And I could look down, and what did I see? Ships, Soviet ships, materials being unloaded and unloaded and unloaded. Could we get it? No. The answer is no. Is this the way to fight a war? Well, not when you're on the tip of the fracking spear and the lead's coming up at you.
또 한 가지의 문제는 조잡한 무기였다. 그래서 표적 하나에 수십 개의 폭탄이 소요됐다. 미국은 이 작은 나라에 2차 대전 때 사용했던 양보다 더 많은 폭탄을 쏟아부었다. 이 상황을 보고 많은 미국인들은 경악을 금치 못했다.
Get out of Vietnam.
그리고 70년대 초 반전 운동과 함께 또 하나의 해묵은 갈등이 폭발한다.
We will define black power. He will listen and recognize it. That's all. That's all.
(1972년 2월) 베트남을 향해 출항한 키티호크호에서 미국의 인종차별 문제가 적나라하게 드러난 사건이 발생한다.
Naval aircraft carriers are a microcosm of America. There's a class society that exists on the ship. The captain is the king and the ruler, and the officer corps are the directors of things that go on. Enlisted men are that working class individuals, and that's where most of our African Americans existed.
You would just end up being a mess cook for a while, or you clean compartments for a while. If you try to get out of mess cooking for over 90 days, or try to quit cleaning toilets, you might have had a long struggle.
(1972년 10월) 키티호크호가 파견된 지 200일을 넘기고 있었다. 8시간 근무, 4시간 휴식의 일과도 계속됐다. (10월 11일) 마침 업무가 줄고 한가해지자 최근 상륙 휴가 때 흑인들과 백인들 간에 벌어졌던 싸움이 화제가 됐다. 그리고 그날 낮에 페리페투스와 흑인 사병 2명이 갑판으로 나갔다.
As we three were walking across the flight deck, a couple of Marines approached us and said, "You blacks," quote, "you blacks can't walk in over twos." We're thinking, yeah, right. Kept on walking. Made the comment again. Police. I'm gonna have 2 Marines tell me I can't walk with 2 other friends. Next thing I know, my neck is under a nightstick with my body up on an A6 aircraft with a nightstick under me. What the heck?
보고를 받은 말랜드 타운샌드 함장은 신속히 사과하고 수습에 나섰지만 이미 때는 늦은 상황이었다.
All hell broke loose. I hate to say it, but it was blacks against whites.
It was an all-out riot.
People being beat up for no particular reason, just because you happen to be of a different color. That was an ugly night. That was an ugly night.
싸움은 12시간 후에야 진정됐고 그 사건은 해군 역사의 전환점이 됐다.
It shook the entire guts of the entire Navy. I don't think the Navy had a choice. It was long past overdue to make some changes in equality, equal treatment, equal rights, equal access.
베트남 전쟁 이후 해군에는 흑인 사병과 장교들이 꾸준히 늘어났다. 그리고 다른 변화가 찾아왔다.
If there are women who want to go to sea and to serve their country in that capacity, then we can find a way to make it possible for them to do so.
로즈메리 메리노는 해군 최초의 여성 조종사 중 한 명이 됐다. 그리고 몇 년 후 제트기로 항모 착륙에도 성공한다.
There were some who were adamantly opposed to this, including the head of Naval Air Training. He made it very clear to us that this was not his idea, and others were very supportive. One of the most important figures in my career was my first commanding officer, Captain Ray Lambert, who was one of a handful of black men who were naval aviators who had flown tactical aircraft. And when I first reported to the squadron, he sat me down in his office. He says, "Rosemary, you're always going to have a tough time because you're short." He was a big man. And he said, "I used my size to help me establish myself in naval aviation. You're going to have to figure some other way." You cannot out-guy the guys. So most women develop their own style. I happen to have attended Catholic girls' schools, and I adopted the Mother Superior style, keeping a straight face most of the time and trying to not overreact.
메리너가 40살의 나이로 선임 장교가 된 1993년에는 여성의 전투 참여 금지법이 폐지됐다. 그리고 21세기에는 여성 전투기 조종사들을 흔히 볼 수 있게 됐다.
Even though in my day we had these overt restrictions on us, I often thought that black men were having a more difficult time than women were. It was still rare to see a black man get it all the way to the top.
Naval aviation is the hardest circle to break into. The majority of African Americans have been in patrol plane or helicopter aviation. And so when you go down to the jet training bases, you see very few African Americans. But we need to fix that.
(9.11) 세계무역센터 테러 사건은 군에 완전히 새로운 과업을 부여했다. 군은 적을 무찌르면서 민심도 얻어야 했다. 이를 위해서는 위성 항법 장치, 즉 GPS 시스템의 도움이 필요했다. 해군 항공수를 진화시킨 GPS로 인해 조종사들에 대한 기대는 더욱 커졌다. 9.11 테러 이후 페르시아만으로 급파된 항공모함들은 지금도 여전히 자리를 지키고 있다. 에릭 도일은 이라크와 아프가니스탄에서 많은 임무를 수행한 베테랑이다.
I wanted to be a pilot since I knew what flying was. Early on, it was just the pure thrill of flying. And it wasn't until flying the F-18 in training that those realities of actually going to war, dropping bombs on an enemy, started to become a reality. When you're flying in an airplane at night over the water, it's black, just to the point there are no visual references out there. It's like flying inside a basketball. It's 100% trust, not only to find the ship, but which way is up and which way is down, because it's all unknown. My heart rate was probably as high as it was when I was in country. It's definitely still, regardless of what you're doing, one of the more, if not the most intense things you do, just trying to land that plane. And it isn't until after you land back aboard the ship does the adrenaline slowly drain out of your system, and that's when you really start to look back on what happened, and I think you go through, every emotion you can imagine. It isn't the jumping out of the jet, high-fiving everybody. It's sobering. you're the one hitting that button to, send a 2,000-pound bomb into the air. It's a sobering experience, and it should be.
공습으로 사망한 이라크와 아프가니스탄 민간인 수는 알려지지 않았다. 물론 레이저와 GPS 유도탄이 나오기 전 시대보다는 훨씬 적었을 것이다. 하지만 그 역시 인명의 손실이고 또 민심을 얻는 측면에서도 손실이기는 마찬가지였다. (2011년) 중동 전쟁은 10년째로 접어들었고 모든 마을과 가옥에서 전투가 이어졌다. 전장이 지상으로 바뀌면 항공모함의 제트기들은 일상적인 지원 업무를 담당하게 된다.
You may fly your 6 to 9 hour mission and never really communicate with the soldier level guys. You may never drop a weapon. You may never do anything at all that is really a tangible act in support of them. I'm not going to lie to you. It's a drudgery.
텍사스주 킹즈빌의 해군 훈련소에서 차세대 조종사들이 양성되고 있다. 이들도 다가오는 기술 혁명에 대해 잘 알고 있다.
You can't hide the fact that unmanned aerial vehicles are definitely the future. The capabilities, the ability for them to stay, aloft for hours and hours. They have better eyes than we do. They have longer legs. They don't have a bladder. If you take the emotion out of it, they're going to make, as a military, us a lot stronger.
I think we're close. I think it's we've got the coolest plans we can make, and after this, it's going to be the robots and nobody else. There's a sense that they're making the last cowboys here kind of feeling, and maybe we'll get to tell our grandkids that we went ripping around the sky back in the day in fighters, and that was a lot of fun. I think it's a great chapter in American history, but manned flight might be coming towards its end.
I'm generally an optimist when it comes to naval aviation. Basing options for the United States are in decline worldwide, and the ability to operate from the sea is a capability that we're going to need more of, not less. But if you're one of those young men and women who is getting ready to go into the Navy or the Marine Corps and wants those wings of gold, do you really want this job? Is it going to go away on you in the middle of your career?
There has been jokes in the past, hey, the last fighter pilot's been born. But the threat is always going to drive the show, and there is going to be a demand. You can't do everything with a robot or a computer.
First Lieutenant Bishop, front and center.
The pilot is held accountable for a decision that's made on scene. It's difficult to imagine when we can get to a point where we can hold a computer, a piece of software, accountable for a life and death decision.
We are moral beings, and at least machines at this point in time are not.
Roughly 410 miles per hour.
That's what I would miss the most if airplanes went the way of drones. That the opportunity for that kind of personal excellence and that sense of human excellence as expressed in controlling the technology in a moral sense will be lost.
We're a part of a pretty rich history, and you guys are a part of that, and you're gonna make history. I ask you to embrace that, feel proud of it, and do us proud.
과거 한 무모한 조종사가 나무로 만든 해상의 임시 갑판에 착륙한 지 100년이 지났고 오늘 이 조종사들이 그 격동의 역사를 물려받았다.
Excellent. 1, 2, and 3.
그 역사를 생각해 보면 이들의 미래도 평범하지는 않을 것이다.